Good Saturday morning, everyone. Today on Perspectives, Western European historians and philosophers could say the birth of modern civilization came through discussions and conversations from the minds of Socrates and Plato. Now, we bring up that analogy this morning because not to challenge the genius of those thousands of years ago, but to present the case how conversations can bring about new ideas and possibly improve our lives. In one special way, here on the Gulf Coast, an organization called Coastal Conversations is dedicated to South Alabama and our three-state region. Now, they are bringing in top-ranked urban planners, industry leaders, environmentalists, and others. The hope is new ideas are generated that preserve and improve the quality of life in coastal Alabama. Now, in addition, it will hopefully entice business and industry to help keep our children and grandchildren from having to seek employment elsewhere. Coastal Conversations organizers say that it all begins with asking the question, what if? Now, also, you see the beautiful skyline there. This morning we are talking to two of the leaders and creators of Coastal Conversations, a startup grant from the J.L. Bedsole Foundation and facilitated by the Coastal Alabama Partnership. Coastal Conversations was created to encourage leaders from our area to come together and to create a platform for what they feel will be increased civic awareness across the region. The goal, they say, is simple: to make Gulf Coast, Alabama the best place to live, work, and play, and to encourage job growth without impairing the local environment. Now, organizers also say what they hope is to create a positive job market with competitive salaries in the hope the children and grandchildren of coastal Alabama do not have to leave in order to seek a better life. Our guest this morning, Chris Lee, Executive Director with the J.L. Bedsole Foundation, and Dr. Michael Chambers, the Executive Director of Coastal Conversations. A conversation about today and the future when Perspectives continues after this quick break. Our guest today, Chris Lee with the J.L. Bedsole Foundation. Chris is the Executive Director, and Dr. Michael Chambers, who is the Executive Director of Coastal Conversations. Gentlemen, thank you both for being a part of the dialogue and conversation today, in fact.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you.
Let's start with first, for those who are not familiar and have not heard yet about this incredible program that the Bedsole Foundation is offering, tell us exactly what is Coastal Conversations.
Well, I can start off, and then Chris, you can chime in. This is a program of the Coastal Alabama Partnership under the leadership of Wiley Blankenship and Andrew LeVere, and it's made possible because of the generous contribution and seed money offered by Bester Ward and Chris Lee of the Bedsole Foundation. It's a program with three essential parts: world-class speakers, a community dashboard, as well as a quality of life survey. And Chris, would you like to add anything there?
A lot of this program is modeled on the Studer Community Institute in Pensacola, and so they've been a really great help as we've gone through the formation stages of this program.
So what happens when we say Coastal Conversations? What do I expect to participate in when I hear that term?
That's a great question. So we sat down and mapped out about 10 key focus areas that cover everything from healthcare to government infrastructure, housing, the environment. And so when we say world-class speakers, we intend to bring people to Mobile who in fact are world-class experts in these particular topics. And what literally we want to do is start the conversation. We're not trying to solve a particular problem necessarily, but we do want to pick topics and issues of concern to the people in this area and bring people who can discuss those issues.
I'm thinking of the word empowerment to create some, I guess, to be a catalyst for some positive change for our area?
I think that's correct. If you define success for us, it would be inspiring positive change.
Now, when you look at this area now, we have truly become a two-county metro area, with Baldwin County receiving so many people from the Mobile area to where they're the fastest growing county, of course, in the state and one of the fastest in the nation. How do you direct the conversation when we're talking about those two counties now and the dynamic of the people who've left Mobile and establishing themselves in Baldwin County. How do we deal with that dynamic?
Well, from Coastal Conversations, we see our mission as to bring these speakers and through the Quality of Life Survey examine how the people feel in both counties, what issues or topics are of concern to them. So clearly in the community dashboard that we can talk about in a second, one of the things that we'll look at is population growth. And clearly Baldwin County has been on a steady increase, as we all know, and Mobile County has been relatively flat for the last decade. But there are a number of reasons there. So we, as I said, we're going to bring speakers in, examine what people think through the Quality of Life Survey, and then look at what the hardcore facts are from the community dashboard for both counties, not just Baldwin, but Mobile as well.
I think that's very interesting when you talk about the dynamics of the two counties, and you see that Mobile, of course, amazingly staying somewhat stable despite all the loss of former Mobile residents who live in Baldwin County. Now, we've had employees here who've initially moved to the area, they moved to Mobile, and then after living here for a while, they decide to buy their second home in the Baldwin County area. But you look at the numbers, how do you get the surrounding communities that are not in the city of Mobile? Are you trying to also reach them to share with them the importance of maybe becoming a part of the metro area as far as in the city limits of Mobile? Is that one of the target areas too to help in that communications?
Well, Chris may have some additional thoughts on this, but we see this program as regional, looking at South Alabama, but primarily Mobile and Baldwin counties. So though it is correctly a tale of two counties, we see the speakers that we're bringing here to address both issues. And when we plan events, we're bringing people from both Mobile and Baldwin County. And yes, the population growth has been considerable in Baldwin County, but you look at the economic growth in Mobile, and that is generating a lot of the population growth in other places, whether it be having the 9th, 10th, or 11th largest port in the United States, the #1 fastest growing container terminal in the United States for 5 years running. There are a lot of things that go into making this whole region a really great place.
This is an exciting time to hear you're sharing this. I was in Virginia prior to moving to Alabama, and I saw that same kind of dynamic take place there where you had several cities, 7 cities in fact, in a metro area, and they each had their own strong dynamic. You're familiar with Norfolk, Virginia, and
Sure.
Virginia Beach, and Hampton, Virginia, and Newport News, and some of the similarities of what is going on here, but they decided to become Hampton Roads, and the first step was getting the chambers to merge, and that really started a lot of dynamics to where that area now is just phenomenal what has happened in the last 20 years. Now, your first speaker you brought in February, and Dr. Ron Ferguson, was dealing with children in the community. Talk about how, to me, that's all very appropriate, because in some cases you hear a lot of people move to Baldwin County because of their children. How was this a dynamic approach for you in that first speaker, Dr. Ferguson?
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Chris here. He was a fabulous speaker that drew for both counties, and I think this is really a good example of how programs can roll out from these speakers that address both counties. Chris?
Okay, and before we talk about Dr. Ferguson, just want to say, Eric, that even though Mobile County and Baldwin County are very different in some statistical demographic facts, the issues that we're trying to educate the region on are universal.
Yes.
So to take for an example Dr. Ferguson on the program that he presented on From Cradle to Career, it was really focused on early childhood development and primarily raised the issue that 80% of a child's brain development occurs between birth to 3 years old.
Yes.
And so that carries through. So a common education statistic is reading and math skills at 3rd grade. Well, many of these kids are behind the 8 ball by the time they get to 3rd grade if we don't have proper intervention earlier. So Dr. Ferguson presented a very simple program that's in 45 cities presently. We are looking at it. There are partners in the community that have expressed an interest. So we'll see if we can implement here, and it will be a partnership between education, the healthcare industry, and not-for-profits that are already in existence that will just be reinforcing families and children and new mothers.
You know, I was looking at some of the statistics that you shared with me, and there is not much difference between Baldwin County and Mobile County as relates to students reading on the level by third grade, and so there's work to be done in both communities.
There's a lot of work to be done, and as Dr. Ferguson stressed, that today, by 12th grade, there is a 4-year gap between African American and Latino students and their white counterparts. So what we have to do is provide some very creative interventions as early as we can to shrink that gap and really give them the skills so that they can be equipped for kindergarten and start learning in 1st through 3rd grade.
All right, well, we're going to take a break on that point. When we come back, a couple of questions about that, as well as we move towards looking at the second speaker that happened, dealing with the small towns and the strength of towns. We'll be talking more with our very special guests today, Chris Lee and Michael Chambers, as Perspectives continues. Welcome back to Perspectives. Our very special guest this morning, Chris Lee, the Executive Director of the J.L. Betzel Foundation, and Dr. Michael Chambers, who is the Executive Director of Coastal Conversations. And these gentlemen work together to bring some good stuff to our community for the betterment of both counties, Mobile and Baldwin County. We're talking about Coastal Conversations. And as we wrapped up the first segment, we were talking about the things that we see are needed in education and the aspect of making sure our children are equipped and prepared. Were you surprised seeing some of the similarities in Mobile and Baldwin? And then that second statement you made in reference to where our children were if they were in the Latino or African American community compared to the children in the white community. Does a lot of that have to do with the amount of private schools in Mobile County in comparison, or what are you equating that with?
Well, it doesn't have a lot to do with private versus public education. What it really has to do is with the environments that these children grow up in. So Dr. Ferguson raised the issue of much more interaction between the parents and the young child at an earlier age does accelerate their growth, both in terms of use and exposure to broader vocabulary, reading, spending time with them. And so some of these are cultural, some of these are economic at the necessities of single-parent households, but there are ways to provide creative interventions, and that's what the basics is looking to.
Well, it's good that these things are spotlighted because in many cases, some parents, that's what they need, that information to hopefully help their children get to the next level. Now, let's talk about your second speaker who was talking about strong towns, and he is also the author of a book called Strong Towns, A Bottom-Up Revolution to Rebuild American Prosperity. And I'm sure that's something that a lot of people want to make sure continues in this community. And of course, with the addition of Austal and Airbus here in the last 10 years, hopefully that's a good foundation to build upon.
Well, I think he was a great speaker. Chuck Marone is known nationally. He was highly recommended by the program in Pensacola. And as you mentioned, his philosophy is from the bottom up. He is ranked one of the top 10 urban city planners in the United States. And really what he recommends is what at least the city of Mobile is doing really well right now, and that is kind of concentrating on some core assets in the downtown area and then building out, and whether it be focusing on those assets or eliminating blight. We found that Chuck Marone's philosophy played really well here, and so we thought he did a great job of presenting what's happened elsewhere that gives us food for thought, but also gave us some time to reflect on what's happening here.
So that's good to hear that we are making some progress as relates to some of the foundational programs that need to be in place. What was taken, you could say, by any of the city and county officials who may have participated in that series, or in that episode there, the second episode? What did you get from them that they got from that particular program?
Well, I think one of the great things that happened, of course, this is made available to the general public. The format is usually on a Tuesday night at 6:30 p.m. The general public can listen to the event. It's absolutely free. And then from time to time, we have follow-up conversations depending on the finances and timing. And so one of the great things that happened from this call is that smaller towns in Mobile or Baldwin County had the opportunity to listen to Chuck Marone and ask some specific questions about, if you're not a Mobile, what can you do? How does a small southern town compete in the environment we have today? And so it gives those city officials, and it did in this case, the ability to get a little more specific information.
Now, who is able to participate in this? Is it open to everyone who has an interest in seeing positive change happen in this community?
Absolutely. So you have our Tuesday evening is the format we have now, beginning at 6:30. Of course, now it's virtual, and we perhaps might open back up in May or June. We're still watching for guidance. But at that point, it'll be live, so people can come out and tune in the event at that time.
Give us an idea of what's ahead as relates to future programs and focus areas.
Well, we've got some great people that we're talking to now, and just to kind of give you a lineup, in late April or early May, we're going to have a launch of the Quality of Life Survey, and this is where we surveyed 750 residents from Mobile and Baldwin County about what they think of what's going on, whether it be air quality, water quality, growth, traffic, you name it, from both Mobile and Baldwin County. And that's a great tool because we'll be able to look at that and see what seniors think and what millennials think, what they want to stay here in Mobile or Baldwin County. In May, we're talking to Costas Chris about coming here on May 18th. He is known as the father of ecotourism in the United States, sustainable tourism. In June, we're going to be rolling out our community dashboard. Dr. Reed Cummings and Giannis Tupovsky at the University of South Alabama have done really a fabulous job and are almost finished. And we will launch that in June. Again, that will be a free tool for the community. You'll be able to see the good and the bad. You will have everything from population growth to obesity, diabetes, graduation rates, as you mentioned, third grade reading levels, infant mortality, child mortality across the board. So the purpose there is whatever the facts are, we'd like to know, and that will help guide us in bringing people here in the future to help us improve. Chris, do you want to?
Just as a side note, when we were talking about Chuck Marone, one of the issues that Chuck Marone centered on was that it's really the basics: sidewalk repair, street optimization. And on your morning show on Fox 10 this morning, they were advertising that tonight will be a live webinar on the street optimization study that has just been completed by Jeff Speck and Associates, who is a renowned national planner. And so they did a complete study of our downtown streets and have a number of recommendations, from going from one-way to two-way and lane width and biking lanes. And so this is something Marone stressed, and it's completely separate from this Coastal Conversations program, but it just coincides nicely with the areas that we're trying to focus on.
We've got about a minute left. If you would focus on very quickly how important this is to do this, especially during this time as the area, the economy, education, everyone looking to restart after COVID-19.
Well, I think it's a good time to start any program like this. Obviously, it's been a little more challenging for us in the midst of a pandemic, and yet in some ways the Zoom or virtual format has allowed people to more easily participate in some cases. But I think it's a program. For me personally, it has the promise to make a great difference in this area. We have a lot of great organizations here in South Alabama that are making a difference, and sometimes they don't have the funding to bring speakers here that they would like to bring, or have easy, free access to the data they need to file for grants or to attract investors. And between the speakers, the dashboard, and the Quality of Life Survey, we believe this is really a great tool for the region.
Dr. Michael Chambers and Chris Lee with Coastal Conversations, brought to us by the J.L. Betzel Foundation. We thank you both so much for wanting to do this and to make it happen here in the area, as well as coming this morning and sharing with our viewers about a program that hopefully many of them will want to participate in. We thank both of you gentlemen very much.
Thank you
very
Eric.
much.
Appreciate it.
And for more information on Coastal Conversations, drop them an email at their website at coastalcon.org. Now, the facility is located at 450 St. Louis Street in Mobile. Next on Perspectives, the Mobile Sports Authority. Did you know that sports tourism generates millions of dollars towards Mobile's bottom line every year? The port city has a rich sports tradition, and now it's become a favorite destination for sporting events, attracting golf tournaments, tennis, soccer, volleyball, baseball, gymnastics, and track and field meets, just to name a few. Well, join us as we learn more about this nearly $170 million industry. Of course, next Saturday morning here at 9 a.m. for Perspectives, as we discuss important issues and seek solutions. Now, if you have any ideas of topics you'd like for us to address, just drop it to us at perspectives@fox10tv.com. I'm Eric Reynolds. Thanks for joining us this morning. Have a great week ahead.
Thanks for watching Fox 10 News. Watch us live wherever you are, on our mobile, our streaming news app, and you can also watch us on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV.